My guest today, Seth Madway, his Emmy count is up to 5. I don't think this is an Emmy, but he's got 5 that look similar to that. They were worth much more, and we're going to talk about him. This is a look at his life. He is on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Currently, Seth is working all kinds of different sporting events, remote technical director, working with ESPN College Game Day, but he has worked on so many other sports, from the NHL, obviously Little League World Series, boxing, golf, the list goes on. And we're going to discuss his professional endeavors, but also a little bit more about his personal life and get the full story here. And I wanted to start here, Seth, with your 5 Emmys. What have they done in validating the product and the work that you take so much pride in?
Well, first of all, every one of them, I mean, it's a team Emmy. Like none of them are, it's not like best actor, best
Yeah.
director. They're not individual. They're all part of a, team collaboration to make those shows happen. And they actually fell into a couple of different categories that make them special. My first 2 were with College Game Day, but they were not actual technical Emmys. The show itself had won for best studio show weekly. These are sports Emmys, obviously. And the Emmys typically break down. There's the Emmys that go to the production team, sort of the above the line, and it's a different category on the technical side. And I've actually been blessed to have won both categories, because with the College Game Day Emmys, which were my first 2, even though they were show and production Emmys, the powers that be recognized that there were several of us that participated in the creative content of those shows and credited us as associate producers, because we played a very significant role in the reasons that those shows won beyond what our actual technical participation was. So to not only see the show, and I was with Game Day from its start on the remote side, but not only to see the show get recognized for what it was, but to also have the executives at ESPN recognizing that a few of us were deserving to be included in that non-technical Emmy was also very special. The next 2 were both technical team Emmys, and they were special in a very different way. They were both related to ESPN's coverage of the X Games, so extreme sports, both of which being from 2 different winters. But the other big part of that is both of those were when we were doing those shows in 3D, and then what we later called 5D, which is when we were creating both the 3D show and the regular HD show through one truck. And 3D, the technical innovations and challenges that went into the limited experiment of live 3D sports, to have been recognized for that was particularly special. And then the 5th Emmy, the most recent, was I was actually working with CBS at the Masters as part of their technical team. I worked the internet and specialty show that focuses on Amen Corner at Augusta. But the entirety of the CBS operations, of the broadcast show, and all the what they call the shoulder feeds, the various specialty shows, were included because it is one huge technical team that puts the whole thing together. So I was one of several technical directors that were listed on that Emmy, as well as, I don't know, probably 400, 500 other technicians, all around as part of that. But just seeing the recognition for everything that goes on to putting that great golf telecast together, that was Tiger's year in 2019. which is what brought a lot additional focus into it, and also probably added to some of the toys that were utilized to put the show together.
In hearing you talk about your accomplishments, and Seth Madway is with me, I'm Bryan Fenley. Sports is a huge part of your life, but to understand your take on sports, you love working in sports, but admittingly, you are not the biggest sports fan. You've said that. However, when you look at your career and the way you've carved out this path, what is most rootable about you?
First with Rootable. Well, first of all, you've done your research, and yes, I am not a sports fan, which actually I find helps in what I do, because it allows me to focus more on the technical aspect of things. Rootable is an interesting word. I'm trying to I mean, is it sort of what makes me want to do what I do?
Yeah, what pushes you? What makes you successful? Why should people get behind you and be inspired by you?
Um, I don't know. Inspired is a big word, but I think it's the being a technical director and doing what I've done for, I don't know, 4 decades almost, I guess, or whatever. Um, you know, every show presents different challenges, and part of what I love about doing what I do is facing those challenges and solving the problems or solving the stuff that comes along. My hobby, if I were to identify one, is computer programming.
Oh,
And what I do as a technical director, they're very similar in that you have a starting point and you have ending point. And in computer programming, you're writing whatever code it is to get from one to the other. And one of the many aspects of a technical director's job is, okay, we're starting here, and then we want to be able to squeeze back to this kind of toolbox and have this other thing happen and this fly in and da 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 da, and building out your show so that you can figure out how to get from point A to point B without painting yourself in a corner, and also in the live environment where you don't always know what's going to happen next or what you're going to be called on to do, and you have to kind of think all that stuff out ahead of time. The other, I think, aspects of being a good technical director is being able to not be so tunnel visioned on what you're doing, and being able to pay attention to what all's going around you in the truck, try to be listening to what the announcers are saying, obviously definitively focused on what the director is saying, because that's the most important aspect of my job, is following through on what he or she is saying. But you have to be aware of a lot of other stuff going on around you to sort of anticipate a little bit and move forward with that.
one of the people who you are very aware of in terms of their success, and I see this all over LinkedIn, and you giving praise to your daughter Ariel, and I see the great work that she's doing, and I want to know how she inspires you, because clearly you might enjoy computer programming, but you have been programmed in a big way to support her, clearly by all the love and support you've poured into her, and how she has reciprocated and shown her love back to you, and has made you proud.
Well, wow, that's she's fallen into a job that is centered on uh, pulling events together and event programming, and to some extent, aspects of what she does aligns in that she also has to sort of um, you know know what the goals are, know what the final product is for the event she's involved in. But starting point is a blank piece of paper with build a budget and go from there and figure it all out. So she gets into a lot of that same sort of thinking. There's also social media and presentation aspects of what she does, and I think some of that she attributes to the media presence that has always been part of our, household. She's also traveling a lot for work, which she grew up with a dad that, I was traveling a significant amount during the entirety of her life, which she sort of understood. But I think now that she's actually doing more travel on her own right for work, she's understanding that even a little bit better.
What is that like? Because life on the road, obviously you want to be there for your kids, but also you have to support your family by going on the road. So how were you able to make it work and deal with what can be really challenging? Because here you are, you have to keep the family afloat and continue on with your job, but you also, of course, want to be there for your kids and your wife.
It starts with having a very supportive wife. So
Yeah.
my wife Wendy and I, we literally met my first day in college.
Oh, wow.
I mean, my first day on site. She had been on campus for a couple of days, but so she's been with me through every aspect of the career, and which included a couple stints at stations, but then mostly freelance. And part of the decision to go freelance and the lack of job security that can bring, especially in the early days, those were all joint decisions. And she's also always understood that me being at home meant there were no dollars being earned, and me being on the road meant that there were. So her support of it was always a big part. We had some other help at times when the kids were younger to assist her a little bit more when I was gone. But the flip side of it is that, like, when my girls were in primary and elementary school, I was on the road pretty much every weekend. That was college game day football back then. But during the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was around, and I was actually one of the most, of the fathers. I was in the classrooms more
Oh,
than a lot of the other fathers with the typical 9 to 5 home for
yeah.
dinner jobs, because I was free. On the days that I was home, I was free during the day. And granted, I missed a lot of stuff on the weekends, and missed a lot of swim meets and gymnastic meets and stuff like that. But on the days that I was home, I took over the transportation. I drove them to school, picked them up, tried to be as involved as I could be. And plus, they got benefit in terms of some trips. When ESPN, ABC was bought out by Disney, and the company was doing a lot of programming over a several-year period at Walt Disney World, my girls were the perfect age, and they were down with me
Oh,
there
wow.
a lot. They've also been to Hawaii twice as part of, for me, work scenarios, for them, full day vacations. And there were some other trips along those lines. So they've benefited, um, they've benefited as well, but that is a struggle. And it's something that a lot of people, do struggle with the road schedule. It's not easy. It takes its toll on a lot of families, and I'm just very blessed that it's worked out very well with me and my family.
Well, certainly, and a lot of people can learn about how to make it work and by your words. And I hope a lot of people in the industry who will watch this will see that while times can be tough, you mentioned how you've been able to make it work, and others can gain some motivation and inspiration from that. Seth Madway, remote technical director, esteemed director, 5 Emmys. He works for ESPN. He works for others companies as well. I'm Bryan Fenley. What do you remember, Seth, from that very first day you met your soon-to-be wife, but that first day of school?
Well, it actually wasn't the day of school yet. It was just the day we happened to live in the same. It was actually a private dorm at the University of Wisconsin. We were both from out of state and couldn't get into
Ah,
the school dorms. And it was actually my roommate organized all the people on our floor. For people who know Wisconsin, we went to Bascom Hill, at Madison, and for a frisbee game, and that's kind of how we met. And we became uh, friends from there. It may have been love at first sight for me. I don't think it was for her. But then just grew into actually, we had a falling off at one point freshman year, reconnected sophomore year, grew into best friends.
Oh,
Best friends moved from there. But yeah, so it was a lot of, I think, being in the right place at the right time. I sort of fell into going to Wisconsin by almost by accident. But if you believe in kismet, I think something drew me there beyond the great career experience that I also ended up getting there.
and as you said, Seth, she's been with you. She's seen the ups and downs of you and your career journey, which helps her understand and sympathize for that life. In a way, I wanted to ask you because in this business, as you know, there are seasons where you're probably working long, long days, and then there might be some times where there isn't as much going on. When have you had to fight the hardest for your career?
Um, it's a great question, and to be honest, it's been so long since I've sort of been in that spot. But in the in the first couple of decades, um, or at least the first decade, you know, there was always the very anxious for um, the phone to ring or to get an email um, with the "Are you available for these dates?" and to jump in and the hope to get um, gigs that are somewhat more regular.
Yeah.
And depending on the year back then, there were times when things were lighter. I mean, I've never done a lot of baseball, although I've done some, and I used to fill in on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball for several years, but that was only like 2 weekends or so out of the year. Um, so my summers were always typically lighter than um, my falls were, and my winters were. And frankly, that's not a bad time to be home. But you know, it really has just depended. Of late, I've finally reached the point in my career where I don't really have that sort of ongoing worry about there being enough work for me. Although the industry's changing, and that's going to have some impact on that down the road. Not necessarily for me because I'm towards the end, but is going to change what, to a degree, I think, what is available for technical directors in the future.
Well, if there's anybody who can adapt, it's you, and that's shown by your resume in the business. Seth Madway is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. You've also been a part of, you mentioned Major League Baseball, but also producing or being a part of in the production truck, that is, a spelling bee.
Yes.
And what is different in the way that you are manning controls for an event like that, unlike anything else sporting related?
To be honest, and again, I was technical director, so I'm pushing all the buttons,
Sure.
making the show happen, not producing it or directing it. So some of the differences fall more onto those categories. For me, they're the only technical challenge, not even that great of a challenge, is that we had a feed that went into the room that couldn't show the words, whereas the feed that was broadcast
Ah,
would show the words. So a little bit like that. But to me, the beauty of something like the spelling bee, and I was involved in it for 5 years when it was on ABC, um, sort of also goes along with my love for the Little League World Series, which I've also been very fortunate to be involved in for the past 10 years. Unlike the pro sports and even unlike the college sports, where the eye is on their money, on their future, whatever. Um, the the spelling bee and the Little League World Series, the kids that are involved are in it for the pure love of what they're doing.
yeah.
I mean, yes, they want to win. They want to come out and be the spelling bee champion. Although just to have gotten to the national finals is a great feat for those kids. And the same with the Little League World Series for, the kids that get to Williamsport, for them to have gotten just to that spot, says a lot about them. But then just, watching those kids at those events, like I said, it's just a different level of joy in them. And I think that makes it a more fun and a different level of joy for us in the truck as well.
So where does that rank as far as working Little League and spelling bee, as to, even though you're not a sports fan per se, where you are most emotionally involved in the event that you are help broadcasting?
Those are themselves very emotional. I do have home teams. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I went to a lot of Flyers games as a kid, so, and all of my work with the Buffalo Sabres. So I have kind of two hockey teams that I pull for, and whatnot. So, I do sometimes root, and certainly on the college side, I root for the University of Wisconsin, and I root for Syracuse because they're up by me here. But the emotional attachment is just not, quite the same. It sort of goes back to that same thing about the joy, and you start seeing a particular kid, in the spelling bee, or a particular team in the Little League World Series that you just kind of fall for,
Yeah.
like there's something about them that you want to keep seeing them, and the better they do, the more you do see them. So you kind of get attached to them, for that way. And there is disappointment when, the team that you've picked for, or the speller that you've kind of zeroed in on, if they don't do it. But so it gives you a little bit of that, of that emotional pull.
I would have to think telling stories, showing those stories and achievements of some of the youngsters, whether it's the Little League World Series or any sporting event, but the untold stories that you and your production group, when you're in the truck and you say you're hitting the buttons, but you play a big part in this, has to be one of the more rewarding parts of your business, in introducing the nation to TV consumers, these stories of these athletes, the courageous plays and moments off the field. All of those things have played a big part, I would think, in what makes your job so rewarding. Seth Madway, thank you so much for sharing your story. And you've got a lot of people behind you rooting for you, and I'm certainly one of them. Appreciate you once again for coming on.
Thank you very much.